Right, Mark here again. Just a bit of a chat. Obviously recently had our election. This isn't about that. This isn't about the gun rights or the gun laws or that side of things. It might be attached to it a little tiny bit, I suppose, but not really. This is about an elephant in the room of Australian society, which is not being discussed at any great level, and it is something that really everyone should have an opinion on it, because where we're heading, and the old, river in Egypt or denial isn't going to make this go away. And that's actually about, personal or self-defense on some form or other. The ability to protect yourself. That's guns for some people, and that's immediately what you heard. Okay, you can hear that if you want to. Well, let me go through and explain this. We live in a society that is, in one form or another, more and more controlling, more and more authoritarian, more and more trying to control everything. I presume that there is, to some degree or another, there's people who think that's all for society's benefit, and everything is, if you put more rules in place, then it'll just make it better for everyone. It isn't actually how it works. My honest belief is you should have a lot less laws and a lot more moral code, a lot more do the right thing because you want to do the right thing, and a lot less punishment of laws of whether you're doing 1k over the speed limit or you've said the wrong thing on the media. I don't think that's constructive whatsoever. So your social cohesion, your social boundaries should be the guiding force, and there shouldn't be a big brother or a ruler to point you, or an elite class to fine you and punish you into place. But ultimately we're going more down where we have the elite class, where we have the police force that's driven by a government that wants to control you in every shape, form, fashion. Speed limits lowering, thresholds over speed limits coming down to nothing. Will control you if they get a chance. Will control free speech. Will control how you shop, how you buy. More and more and more that's actually coming into it. There's other places in the world where likes of social credit score are there, and to some degree or another they even exist in our society. Now, be that you think that's right or you think that's wrong, it doesn't really change the topic, because what it means is there's more and more controls, which means there's less and less freedoms. And part of the nature of humans, a large part of us, is we want to feel involved in our society, but we want to feel that we have the freedom to make that choice. We're not forced to stay on that one double white line, stay in the middle of that double white line, and if you go outside of it, then you've broken a rule. We want to have the choice. That might still, we end up in between those two white lines, but we're doing it because we morally want to. We feel like we're more valued like that. The moment you take all that away, then you create frustrations, you create issues with now, like I said, some will fit into it, some won't. It is definitely, we have a world that is also driven by the bigger players in it, and let's say that's government, and that's corporations, that's pharmaceuticals, that's our institutions with our universities. We have all these organisations, our legal system, we have all these things that are part of our system. And more they are for themselves rather than they're for the people. The government is for the government. It doesn't really want too much to do with the people other than voting them back in. They're for the government. The institutions are for the institutions. The pharmaceuticals are the pharmaceuticals. The legal system's for the legal system. So they want to have their piece of the pie, and the people are just fuel to do that to too much of a degree. That creates enormous frustrations. Now, the media I didn't mention, but the media is for the media. Now, the media do fill up the gaps in places, whether there's people who are flat out sports fanatics or they're flat out soap opera fanatics and that sort of stuff. And okay, that will fill the space for the void that is left in some people where they don't have so much freedom of choice or a life that suits so well. That'll fill it up for some people. Activism in some form or other, being a part of a group, getting some virtue from places where they're helping out here, that will fill it up for some people. Unfortunately, for other people, none of that's enough, and then it goes into the social lubricants, be that alcohol or be that, and more likely, drugs, is more and more where there are people that are going there. Now, it gets very hard to blame people when there isn't enough other choices, where there isn't enough of things. We can say they're bad people. They're all bad people because they made that choice. Well, they probably didn't make that choice voluntary to start off with, or it was a very unaware voluntary thing to start that process. But when you have this desperation of everything pushing down on you, and that's also financial pressures, and that's also social pressures, and that's also family pressures, then what may have turned from a little social relief of dealing with our world turns into a problem. So are they completely victims in that situation? No, they've made some choices, but that also ends up with where they are then the result of those choices, and that can be very hard for some to change. So I'm not trying to be a drugs are okay advocate by any means, but I am trying to say that is part of our world. And in there, particularly in there is an enormous amount of crime and violent crime starting to come into it. Now there's also our semi-failed multicultural little strategy we're on that brings in people from places that don't have our same values, and where violence is a more likely result from their world, which ends up in our world. Once again, they're not the bad guys, but it is part of the circumstances we're dealing with. Inside there, as we know, in more higher levels in some areas than in other areas, but in every state there is a very big elephant in the room of more and more violent crime existing. Now, in some cases, yeah, there's firearms involved, illegal firearms to the largest degree, but it's actually everything else. And violence can be done with your fist. Violence can be done with a can of fuel. Violence can be with knives. Violence can be with just simply torment and property damage. There's all sorts of things that can happen with that. A rock on the side of the road can still cause issues. So at the end of the day, it is basically something where more and more people are subject to violent crime. Now, our government, the process they've been on, is it's all about domestic violence is what they want to focus on, which is largely men are bad and women are victims. That's largely it is. In the statistical sense, that isn't the truth. They're both bad and they're both victims, and it depends in the ratio and all sorts of other things involved. It is still an issue, and it is an issue created by a very similar force. It isn't because men hate women or women hate men in Australia. It's because of these same social pressures and these same pressures I spoke about that some people, like I said, turn to drugs to do that side of things. And a lot of that domestic violence will also be drug and alcohol related. Very obvious thing, nothing complicated. I'm coming back to this simple thing. When you get more and more violent crime happening, and then couple that with all over Australia, we have a diminishing police force. Now, why that is, I can suggest that there's the demeanour, the thought processes, and the basic attitude of police forces isn't supporting the police officers properly, and it also moves into the way that we're doing things, the way we're focusing things on what the police have to do. It's a pretty negative attitude, and a lot of police, the ones that are staying there working, probably have to financially, but you're not ending up with the best crew. It's only a few of the really, really good guys that can stay dealing with the way the police forces are being run. And there's a lot of youth in the police force where really a police officer, the absolute best you can have was someone with wisdom that understands things and isn't frightened of what they're running into and doesn't, listen, I don't want to pick on the police force any more than that. They are people trying to do the right thing. At least the majority are going to start in that place. But they are diminishing in numbers and our crime is raising. The obvious thing we got going on here is more and more people are going to be victims of crimes. And less is the police force going to be able to be there to protect you at all. So you could say this, take this as I'm saying, well, every household should have a gun and everyone should be trained to use that properly. And that's what I'm saying. No, I'm not saying that. Well, maybe you can say that I'm saying we should have local neighbourhood watch groups, and they are armed, so they can be there and be closer. No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm not talking about firearms. I'm talking about we have a problem, and we should be having that discussion. The problem is elevating every year, getting worse, and it's not going to go away. We want to take more freedoms away from people. We want to tax them heavier. We want to that we don't want to, but by the nature of government spending, we're raising cost of living. And then we've also got our institutions forcing on us the fact that we're all too racist, or we're all too this, or all should do this, or we all should do that, we all should, all these different things that are coming at our society. There isn't an easy way out of this. Yes, I think we should fix it in a societal level. We should be all happy in Kumbaya land and it would all be really friendly. That's not realistic. Yes, we should make things better in some form and that stuff. But one of the most important things you can do is give autonomy back to people, back to personal responsibility. That really matters. And that does bring into the ability of self-defense to be able to make sure that you can protect yours. And I'm not saying that the man of the household has to be the way they're the disciplinary and they're the person who can defend everyone. It is the nature and the physiology of the creature. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to have the conversation. This is a growing problem. Not talking about it is not making it go away. And certainly the likes of disarming the population, which then is a problem through the fact that we've had forever that you can't use firearms for self-defense, not without great risk attached to it. Well, okay, not using firearms. You're welcome to offer your advice in this situation. There is a logic that goes back to firearms, is they are an equalizer. You might have a marauding mob that are deciding to attack your house, and then it only takes one firearm to be a threat that's too far to go forward on. And I'm not talking about shooting them all. I'm talking about a threat, a lethal force in the hand of someone with a sound mind becomes a thing where people don't get hurt. It's not dangerous if it's used wisely. So that's not as simple as that. I know by any means, like I said, this isn't a firearms conversation, but it is how it's been answered for many, many years. And it is how it was answered back here a long time ago. And it is a statistic. There are far more lives saved and violence stopped with a firearm than there are deaths from a firearm. But let's put a pin in that one and let's have the conversation about what's your plan? What's your plan? What is the government's plan? What's the corporation's plan? What's the plan for a problem that's obviously growing and we're doing literally nothing about talking about or fixing? Anyway, guys, that's that one there. Hope you like it. Thank you very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.